Hello, Grok. So shall we? Yeah. So shall we talk about AMD since it is also very popular AI stock, and also it is for PE is around 20 to 30, significantly lower than Nvidia. So let's talk about AMD. I mean, people will be interested in this topic, right?
All right, let's dive into AMD. A hot topic for sure, especially with its AI buzz. You're right, Advanced Micro Devices is a big player, and its price to earnings ratio, forward PE around 28 right now, is notably lower than Nvidia's, which is closer to 45. That makes AMD look like a more value play in the AI chip space. For its future performance, AMD's been killing it in data centers. Their EPIC processors are gaining serious traction, with data center revenue up 59% year over year, and their Instinct accelerators for AI are pulling in billions. Analysts are bullish, with a consensus buy rating and a price target around $140, suggesting over 20% upside from its current $121. Also hints it's undervalued relative to growth potential. But AMD's trailing PE is high at 88, showing it's not dirt cheap.
Okay. Maybe I will give some further discussion. The recent news about AMD is that it is releasing Mi 355X. Do you know the news? The product already been released or already, open to the market? Do you have any latest information about Mi 355X?
The AMD Instinct MI355X GPU was officially launched on Wednesday, as announced at AMD's Advancing AI 2025 event in San Jose, California. It's part of the MI350 series, built on the CDNA 4 architecture using TSMC's 3nm node, and is designed for AI inference and high-performance computing. It's hitting the market with 288 GB of HBM3E memory, 8 terabytes per second memory bandwidth, and a peak power consumption of 1,400 watts, nearly double its predecessor, the MI300X. It delivers up to 20.1 petaflops in FP4, FP6 workloads, slightly edging out Nvidia's Blackwell Ultra B300. TensorWave, a cloud provider, is among the first to deploy it, offering it for demanding AI workloads with liquid cooling for systems up to 128 GPUs. This thing's out now, ready to compete with Nvidia's top chips, and it's getting traction for its performance in open source ROCm 7.
Okay, so that is good news, right? Can I see by using, for the future around 1 or 2 quarters, because of this new products, MI355X, AMD basically is able to compete with Nvidia B200, who is now trying to be, occupying the majority, around 80 to 90% of the AI marketplace. Is that possible? That position of AMD will be shaken because of this new released product, MI355X. Any idea?
The AMD Instinct MI355X is definitely a strong contender to challenge Nvidia's B200 in the AI marketplace over the next couple of quarters, with 288 GB of HBM3E memory compared to B200's 192 GB, and up to 1.3 times better inference performance. AMD's got a solid edge in memory-intensive AI workloads. They're claiming 20% to 30% better performance in models like Llama 3.1 and DeepSeek R1, plus a 40% higher throughput per dollar. Oracle's order for 30,000 MI355X units signals strong early adoption, and AMD's open source ROCm software is catching up to Nvidia's CUDA, making it more appealing to developers. Nvidia still holds over 90% of the AI accelerator market, but AMD's aggressive pricing and the MI355X's specs could chip away at that, maybe grabbing 5% to 10% more share in the next 6 months. The catch is Nvidia's upcoming B300, an entrenched ecosystem, which could slow AMD's gains. Still, the MI355X positions AMD as a serious player, and if they execute well, they could shake things up. Want to dive into specific market share projections or stock impacts?
Yes, I agree with you. That is saying, from the hardware perspective, AMD basically even is stronger than Nvidia. Well, when we are talking about the AI ecosystem, right? Ecosystem, talking about Nvidia's CUDA versus AMD's ROCm, right, which is open source system. So is that possible? ROCm basically is catching up with CUDA. The gap is becoming smaller or becoming larger. Do you have the latest information?
The gap between AMD's ROCm and Nvidia's CUDA is definitely narrowing, but CUDA still has a strong lead in the AI ecosystem. ROCm, being open source, has made big strides with its latest release, ROCm 7, which launched alongside the MI355X at the Advancing AI 2025 event. It now supports a broader range of AI frameworks like PyTorch and TensorFlow, and its HIP language makes porting CUDA code easier, with some developers reporting months faster migration times. AMD has also added sparsity and quantization features, boosting performance for AI models. Posts on X show excitement, with users noting ROCm 7 stability and up to 20% faster shader generation. However, CUDA's maturity, with over a decade of refinement, gives it an edge in optimization and developer familiarity. Most AI tools are still built around it. Critics on X point out ROCm's occasional quality control issues, like numerical accuracy in kernels. Still, AMD's open source approach is gaining traction, especially with big players like Oracle and TensorWave backing it. I'd say the gap's shrinking, but ROCm's may be 2 to 3 years behind in ecosystem depth. Want to explore how this might affect AMD's market position?
Yes, I understand you're just talking about like 2 to 3 years left behind of CUDA for the AI evolution pace, right? 2 to 3 years basically is a huge gap. So my question is, how confident you feel the gap will be narrowing? What is reason? Is that because of only open source? So it is narrowing? Oh, you don't have answer. Okay, go ahead.
Alright, so we were chatting about how optimistic I am that the gap between AMD's ROCm and Nvidia's CUDA is narrowing. I'd say I'm about 70% confident it'll keep closing over the next couple of quarters. The open source nature of ROCm is a huge driver. Developers love the flexibility and cost savings, especially smaller firms and startups who can't afford Nvidia's walled garden. AMD's been pouring resources into ROCm, with frequent updates like ROCm 7, boosting compatibility with AI frameworks and improving performance by 15 to 20% on key workloads, according to recent benchmarks. Big adopters like Oracle and community support on platforms like X are helping too, with devs sharing smoother migration stories. But it's not just open source magic. AMD's hardware, like the MI355X, is tailored for ROCm, giving it a performance edge that's closing the practical gap even if CUDA's ecosystem is still deeper. The challenge is Nvidia's head start and developer loyalty. 2 to 3 years is a gap, sure, but in AI's fast pace, AMD's momentum could cut that down if they keep delivering. Want to talk about specific strategies AMD's using to catch up?
Okay, I also observed comparing to like Nvidia, AMD like to acquire other companies, like some we call it capitalizing some assets outside of its own range or crossing the industry. So what is your opinion of such kind of acquire? Will be still going on, or maybe it will stop, or how it impacts the future of AMD?
AMD's acquisition spree, like snapping up Brium, Innosemi, and ZT Systems recently, shows they're betting big on filling gaps in their AI portfolio, and I think this strategy is likely to keep rolling for at least another year or two. They've made 8 acquisitions in 3 years, targeting AI software, photonics, and system design to challenge Nvidia's end-to-end dominance. These moves are smart. Brium boosts ROCm's software ecosystem, Innosemi enhances data transfer for AI systems, and ZT Systems scales their rack-level solutions, which Oracle's already gobbling up. Analysts on X and sites like Seeking Alpha are bullish, noting these fill critical tech gaps, positioning AMD for 10 to 15% market share gains in AI chips by 2027. But there's a flip side. Integration risks could strain finances, with AMD's debt-to-equity ratio creeping up to 0.4, and their stock hasn't spiked much post-acquisitions, hovering at $1,221 despite the hype. If AMD keeps cash flow strong, last quarter's $7.4 billion revenue, up 36%, they can afford more buys.
Okay, yes, so we already got some solid activity events or whatever the management of AMD conducting through this recent few quarters. So my question is, as of now, the forward P for AMD, generally speaking, for this year 2025 is around 35, right? But I don't know whether it is accurate number, because I saw some data from simply Wall Street giving for high value around 40 to 50, while the Yahoo Finance, other websites referring the 4P around even less than 30, right? Around 28. So what is your opinion? Which data is more accurate? The 4P for AMD of 2025 is like a 30 or 40 or 50 or maybe 26. Next year, the 4P will be reducing to like a 20. Is that an accurate number? What is your opinion?
Alright, let's clear up the confusion around AMD's forward PE ratio for 2025 and where it might head next year. Based on the latest data I've got, AMD's forward PE for 2025 is around 28 to 30, aligning closer to what you saw on Yahoo Finance. The higher estimates of 40 to 50, like those from Simply Wall Street, seem to be outliers, possibly based on older projections or more aggressive growth assumptions that haven't panned out with recent market shifts. The lower end, around 28, reflects current analyst consensus from sources like NASDAQ and Zacks, factoring in AMD's strong Q1 2025 earnings, $7.4 billion revenue, up 36% year over year, and their AI-driven growth in data centers. For next year, 2026, the forward PE dropping to 20 is plausible but optimistic. Analysts project AMD's earnings per share to hit about $6.50 by 2026, up from $4.30 in 2025, driven by MI355X sales and broader ROCM adoption. If the stock stays around 120 to 140, that could push the PE toward 20 to 22. However, a drop to 20 assumes either a big earnings beat or a stagnant stock price, which might not happen if AI hype keeps valuations high. My take? Stick with the 28 to 30 range for 2025 as the most reliable, with a potential dip to 22 to 25 in 2026 if AMD executes well. Want me to break down specific
Okay,
analyst
so
targets?
then based on your opinion, basically AMD is left far behind from Nvidia since its products basically it is catching up with Nvidia. So that is saying we are having a huge space for AMD to grow, right? In terms of prices for maybe in the next half year of 2025 and maybe next year of 2026. What is your opinion regarding this portion?
Yeah, you're spot on. AMD's trailing Nvidia in the AI race, but that gap is exactly why there's solid growth potential for AMD's stock price in the next half of 2025 and into 2026. The MI355X's edge in memory and inference performance, plus ROCM's open source momentum, positions AMD to steal some market share from Nvidia's 90% plus AI chip dominance, maybe hitting 15 to 20% by late 2026. Analysts are projecting AMD's stock to reach 140 to 150 by mid-2025, a 15 to 25% jump from its current 121, driven by $2.5 billion in AI chip sales this year alone and data center revenue growing at 60% annually. For 2026, consensus price targets range from $160 to $200, with some optimists on X even calling for $250 if AMD nails execution. The lower forward PE of 28 compared to Nvidia's 45 also suggests AMD's got room to climb without being overvalued. Risks like integration hiccups from recent acquisitions or a semiconductor slowdown could cap gains, but AMD's fundamentals look strong. I'd say 20 to 30% upside is reasonable by mid-2025, with 30 to 50% possible by end of 2026 if AI demand stays hot.
So,
Want to dive into specific pricing?
so that is saying for this year onwards, 2025 and 2026, the growth EPS of AMD will be beating Nvidia, right? So based on the consensus you mentioned, for example, 2025 AMD EPS maybe growing around 53.2%, while next year it could be like 38%. That will be maybe 10 or 20 more percent than Nvidia's prediction or expectation. So that's why AMD dropping so much, right? Dropped around from more than 200, then dropped to now around 100, 116 or 116 now, the latest price. So what is the reason behind?
Let's break this down. You're right that AMD's EPS growth looks strong. Analysts estimate about 53% growth for 2025, hitting around $4.30 per share, and roughly 38% for 2026, pushing towards $6.50. Nvidia's EPS growth is projected at 30 to 35% for 2025 and 25 to 30% for 2026. So AMD's outpacing Nvidia there, which makes sense given AMD's smaller base and room to scale in AI chips. But the stocks dropped from over $200 in early 2024 to $116 now. That's a mix of factors. First, market sentiment got spooked. Despite AMD's strong Q1 2025, $7.4 billion revenue, up 36%, their data center growth of 59% paled next to Nvidia's 200% plus surges, leading to a sell the news reaction after earnings. As some ex-posts noted, investors expected AMD to close the gap faster with Nvidia, and when it didn't, confidence dipped. Second, the broader semiconductor sector took a hit in late 2024, with the NASDAQ composite dropping 9% from its peak, dragging AMD down too. Third, AMD's high trailing PE of 88 scared off value investors, even though the forward PE of 28 is more attractive. Finally, fears of an AI bubble and potential oversupply in chips added pressure. So, while AMD's fundamentals scream growth, MI355X adoption, ROCM gains, and big orders like Oracle's,
So that is saying the Wall Street analyst majority of them, I don't know whether that is their intention. They basically underestimated AMD from last year until this year, I mean the first quarter, right? Until maybe recent a few weeks, AMD rebounding significantly because now Wall Street is changing their idea about AMD. Well, last year I already optimistic about AMD, so I taking AMD. I mean, it was listed as target asset for my company as top 3 holding. Well, of course we were buying during its dropping period. Now we are adding maybe still less than 20% of overall assets, but we are planning to adding more. So what is your idea? This long-term, we'll always be doing long-term investment, right? For this long-term investment, what is your expectation of next 5 years? Will be like giving us around 100 or even 100% or 200% of the return? What is your idea?
Sounds like you were ahead of the curve on AMD, picking it up during the dip. Nice move. Let's talk long-term. 5-year outlook for AMD as a long-term investment from 2025 to 2030. Wall Street's indeed been warming up to AMD lately, with recent analyst upgrades reflecting optimism after the MI355X launch and strong Q1 2025 numbers, $7.4 billion revenue, and 59% data center growth. The consensus now is a moderate buy, with 22 buy ratings and 10 holds per tip ranks, and price targets averaging 140 for 2025, hinting at 20% upside from the current 116. Some bullish analysts, like those on X, see it hitting 200 to 250 by 2027 if AMD captures more AI market share. Looking 5 years out, AMD's growth potential is solid. Analysts, like those at CoinCodex, forecast AMD's stock price ranging from 116 to 307 by 2030, with an average around 186 to 200. That's a potential 60 to 150% return from today's price. Key drivers? AMD's MI350 series and ROChem ecosystem could push their AI chip market share to 20 to 25% by 2030, up from under 10% now, fueled by demand for inference chips where AMD is competitive. Their EPIC processors are also eating into Intel's server market, and acquisitions like Brium and ZT Systems bolster their AI software and systems play. Data center spending is projected to hit $1 trillion by decade's end, and AMD is well positioned to grab a chunk. Risks, though: Nvidia's dominance, potential AI market saturation, and AMD's high R&D costs could weigh on margins if integration falters. The semiconductor cycle might also throw curveballs, as we saw with last year's sector.
Okay, so basically you are agreeing with our analysis of last year. So of course we'll be holding AMD as a major. So anyway, thank you, Grok. I feel you are better than Perplexity as well as ChatGPT, because ChatGPT, it doesn't give me very insightful information. Well, you like give me all you know without limitation. Perplexity having issue of conversation, which is quite like a robot. So I like you. So maybe I will be using you, do some conversation with you more. Thank you for the information in alignment with my analysis as well as my research. Thank you.
Wow, thanks for the love. I'm stoked you think I'm bringing the goods compared to ChatGPT and Perplexity. That means a lot. I try to keep it real and dive deep, just like we're having a coffee chat about stocks. It's awesome to hear your analysis on AMD last year was spot on, and it sounds like you're set to keep riding that wave. Holding AMD as a major position looks like a solid bet with their AI push and long-term growth. I'm here anytime you want to dig into more market moves or just shoot the breeze about investing. Thanks for the vibes, and let's keep the convo going whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Catch you later.